On Tuesday, June 21st, so I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Winooski Liquor Control Board. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us, led by Deputy Mayor Jim Duncan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So we have 8 items on. I think we should go through these like business by business versus item by item. And so we have for Onion City Chicken and Oyster, we have a new first and third class liquor license, an outside consumption permit, and a sidewalk permit. Jenny.
Yes. So this is, as you said, it's a new license. They have submitted a diagram. Their application is complete. Their sidewalk permit application is a little bit different. It's containing 2 sides. The applicant is here to elaborate on that a little bit more. Staff did have some concerns over a couple items with this right here. One is moving currently a parking kiosk that is currently there. So there would be, that can be done by Public Works. There would be some cost associated with that. This sidewalk permit, and the applicant will explain that further, wants to have a modular deck, which will be removed on a seasonal basis and installed just to make it level because there's a step down. One of the other concerns from staff was that it might be close for parking. So when a car is parked there, if the car is over the bumper, the 2-foot bumper, that might cause some issues because that would impede the sidewalk permit. And the other concern that the staff had was that there's a risk of hitting the seating area when a car pulls in really close to the curb. So those are the issues.
Is that because of the space being unaccommodating or just the proposed use? Do you have any detail on it?
It's the proposed use, yeah, Laura.
Do you want to come up, Laura?
Yeah.
You want me to come up?
Yeah, please.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Great, so we also own Misery Loves Company, and even though the spaces are slightly different as far as the sidewalk that we'll be using, at Onion City, there is a little bit of a space, a step down before cars park in. In our experience, those spots are so deep that cars go much further than they actually need to go. And so in building the platform that we want to build, leveling it off, there'll also be a back to it so that there'll be a visible barrier that cars can see, and actually, in our opinion, will be safer than what exists now. Because right now, if we have picnic tables down at Misery, when cars come in, they can't see where the curb is, and so they often go further and onto the sidewalk. And they'll bump picnic tables. We've had people bump them when there are people sitting there as well. So what we, with the visibility here, it sort of like stops people ahead of time and actually, hopefully will make it safer.
So we're talking about one of the facades on the Winooski block building and putting a temporary deck in there with a wall that changes the footprint there versus the rest of that block.
It does. So it would be between the 2 trees that are there right now, and it's directly the frontage of our space there. Right now, folks can, when they park, they can go right up to that kiosk, so that kiosk would need to be moved. But that area would be accessible, once we built a deck, it would be accessible much easier by the sidewalk area. So folks in wheelchairs, folks who have mobility issues would actually be able to access our seating area a lot easier than stepping down.
Is your build out going to be similar to kind of the build outs that are in Burlington over the summertime that a lot of businesses do?
Like the little parklets that
Yeah.
have been, yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. It won't actually go out into the parking
Right.
spaces, but yeah, very similar. I mean, we want to make it modular so we can break it down in the winter. Yeah.
The platform is gonna be raised up so it's at grade with the sidewalk. Is that what you said? So it's not
Yes.
gonna, the steps are part of or underneath the platform.
Exactly.
What would be the height of the wall, proposed wall?
I have to look at our measurements. I know the one that we're building for Misery right now, which is just in grade with it, comes up to, it's not incredibly high, probably 40 inches. I can get you the details on that though.
Okay.
You'd be doing a similar height for this one?
I think so. It's when you're sitting at it, sort of hits you like right below your shoulder, so it's not above your head. You still can look and see, and there's still line sight from like the car onto the sidewalk as well.
And I don't know if I caught what the proposed material would be.
Most likely like pressure treated wood. That's what we're using for the benches we're doing down at the other one. It's working well.
Would that be painted or just plain?
You can't paint, I think at like the first season, you can't do anything to the pressure treated, so it just has to kind of be itself, which is not, ideal, but
Okay.
we'll see.
Okay. To make sure I'm understanding this, you are proposing to build a platform on the car side where the steps are. Does this also go on to the full width of the sidewalk to the facade of the building? Or this is just for that stepped area?
Just for that stepped area, so I think it's slate or whatever that
Mhm.
different material is, and that's sort of mimics on the other side of the rotary what people use for their sidewalks, seating, I should say. So it's not on the brick at all. There's like a marble step that goes down, so it would kind of there would have to be a little bit of overlap just to create some support there. And I'll have to talk to my builder and see. This might not happen like right as we open. Possibly we'll just have some seating down in that area if allowed, and then hopefully build that platform seating if it's approved.
I share staff concerns on this. One, I certainly wouldn't approve having the city move a parking kiosk for this. If your business wanted to contribute to that cost, I would consider it. I also, I don't know. If you're equating this to like what you're doing in front of Misery, I would like to, has that been there already? I don't feel like I've seen this.
It's in progress right now.
I would want to see that. I'm having a hard time visualizing this, and having that disruption to this area when the rest of the block doesn't look that way concerns me about how pedestrians will feel going through there, like making that feel like a 100% private space. And the staff concerns about parking also concern me. And I'm sharing this with all of you because this is not my choice.
Do we have an estimate on cost to move the kiosk?
Is John here?
What I can tell you is that kiosk is powered by solar, has a cell phone plan in it. So it's dismantling the top piece from the base, and it's 4 bolts to move it, drill 4 new holes and hook it. So I would think a couple hours of labor for Public Works for 2 people is kind of, I'm not John Rocker, but, if I had to kind of paint a picture for you, it's probably 4 hours of labor, total.
John Rasher, are you there?
Yeah, that's correct what John was saying. It is, it's probably a couple hours worth of work. We could track it to determine like man hours, how long that takes.
So in addition to labor, we don't have any, this is a question, I'm saying it's a statement, it's intended as a question. Do we have any policies around such requests to help guide our response?
No, there's no policy on relocating infrastructure to accommodate sort of private use. We don't have anything like that in place.
I would have concerns about allowing it in this instance and then facing similar requests in the future.
This is opening a door to changing, like, movement of public infrastructure and changing the footprint of, like, we already have some issues with what we're considering store frontage, sidewalk use area, and folks being concerned about having different depths of sidewalk. And so this is, I don't know, I feel like this could be problematic in the future.
I guess two things that I'm looking at. So if I look at the map here, the parking spots are definitely much deeper than the cars are parking into them. So if the barrier does give somebody that visual cue to not to continue to go forward, I think that the parking concern that staff had would be minimized. And then if I look at like McKee's seating area, that's way larger than what their spot is. So there may, to enable the rest of the businesses to try to give themselves a little more square footage, I think is evening out what McKee's currently would have.
See, that's what I have a problem with, is you lease a space, there's infrastructure in front of it already. Why do you then argue that you require public space because you have less lease space than what you picked already? Like, many of our businesses have differing store frontages.
I mean, I think if we want the downtown to be attractive and offer a large area for people to sit outside, that portion has less space than other portions. It's not the business owner's fault that the city didn't build more sidewalk there.
I think I see this as giving up space or taking away space from cars and give it to people who want to sit outside in the summer. And this place will be available 9 months out of the year or 8 months, 6 months out of the year for cars, and 6 months out of the year for people who want to sit and eat food. I think we were talking about outdoor seating during the pandemic in this way of like, this is something we should be promoting. And I guess the biggest question I have is how that visible barrier is going to work. If it is 40 inches at the sidewalk grade, it's going to be 46 inches, almost 4 feet at the parking grade. And if that creates this just wall effect along that entire block, if you imagine this request being replicated along this section, that changes the character of that block. And so I think that's a question I have, but it's hard to make a decision on that purely on speculation. I'm going to be looking at a wood wall. And so I think that's the problem I'm having, is I don't think it's undoable. I think there are places in Burlington that have done exactly this, and it has worked to create this space on the sidewalks. I'd be kind of curious to see an example of what's envisioned like in place. I don't know if that's possible with what you have outside MLC, but as far as relocating the infrastructure, I would agree if it was a light pole, but to take out 4 bolts and put them somewhere else is not, that doesn't feel like a big ask. And we remove trees all the time for private development purposes, which is also infrastructure. So I think this is, it doesn't feel like a huge lift as opposed to spending thousands of dollars of taxpayer money to move kiosks down the street. So I definitely share the concerns about what this could look like if replicated along the block, but I think partly it's just because I can't totally picture what that looks like.
Which is why I would rather see it play out at the other location before approving it for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also think it's along those same lines, like putting a structure here that doesn't fit in with the rest of it. You know, we talk about streetscapes all the time. And as far as moving, I think it's a can of worms to move parking infrastructure upon request. I think that's going to keep coming up. and those kiosks are located, you know, supposedly centrally, so they're easy to find, they get moved somewhere weird, then we were getting more complaints about, I didn't know that there was paid parking there, because I couldn't find the kiosk. Could be minor. How do others feel?
I know what's represented here. I'm just wondering about what is the actual amount of feet in between this proposed building side seating area and the, this proposed potential deck. Is that actually ADA compliance? Because I see numbers for most of the other things, so I'm just trying to conceptualize it, and the map isn't helping.
There's a picture here, I don't know whose picture this is, but it shows the exact space that we were proposing to put the, isn't this my spot?
Yeah, right here. This is yours, right here.
So the brick area, which currently has, from the previous tenants, has these like front-facing benches on it, which are up against the wall. I think I did not measure from the end of that to the end of the step, but it's well over 4 feet. I'm sure of it, but I don't have that exact measurement, and I can certainly get that for you. I guess if I could ask a question or make a suggestion, is that I think first and foremost, we'd like to ask permission to use this area as outdoor seating. And then if we need to come back and say, hey, we have this outdoor seating, we'd like to make it a little bit more accessible for people who are in, you know, who have mobility issues, or just for our staff, or so we're not having to step down to go into the seating area, then we can revisit that if that makes more sense. But the initial, for me, the most important thing is that we're able to access that space for outdoor seating right now.
I think you mentioned, so building on your question, the distance between the benches and where the proposed additional seating is, I think that's wider than the space in front of Ms. Reel's company.
Yeah,
So
what
I
was trying to
have less
remember.
concerns about that. To me, in agreeing with Thomas, it does remind me of some other spaces in Burlington, where there's sidewalk between the business and between where the outdoor seating is. So that's not as much of a concern. It's honestly kind of happening down here on the west side of the street, west side of the circle anyway. I am reluctant to move a kiosk again without having some type of framework or policy. Just anticipating similar requests of like what's fair or what's, you know, ends up being, not that we can't, but just having some guidelines about when we do that and who pays for it.
I'm more than happy to pay for the kiosk to be moved. That makes a difference.
Jenny, is it possible to approve, if we approve the outside consumption permit, like, is it possible to approve use of the space as is tonight, but then come back and revisit this?
We could do that. We would just have to amend outside consumption.
Sure.
And DLC doesn't charge to do that, so.
Would that be a viable path for folks?
I'm comfortable with that.
One thing that I'm noticing though is further on, we have a similar situation. So I want to make sure that we're being equitable with whatever decision we make.
I mean, someone could also move to approve everything as is tonight.
And I'll make that motion, approving everything as is.
Do you want to make a motion to approve items A, B, and C?
Correct.
If it doesn't get seconded, it doesn't go, and we can make a different motion.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
I ask a question then on the sidewalk permit application
Yeah.
doesn't explicitly talk about building? The only thing that is objectionable to me in that is, or that seems objectionable, is relocating the parking kiosk. Am I correct in reading this? Like the permit itself only says request to relocate parking kiosk. It doesn't describe building any sort of structure. It just says benches in front of windows which are already there, outdoor seating, lower slate area for tables and chairs. So if we approve this, isn't that the path that you were suggesting, Mayor?
I would say no, because it includes this drawing of building materials in the step-down space.
Isn't it just rope?
Yeah. When I submitted this, I did not include the decking.
Okay.
And then Jenny and I were sort of talking about it. I was kind of waiting to see how my builder did on the first one before I committed him to the next one. So she said that we could just augment this, but the original plan did not include the decking on it.
So could we approve it without removal of parking kiosk, and we can revisit this kiosk and deck discussion later?
Is that to us or to Jenny?
That was to Jenny, and Elaine nodded yes, so.
Okay.
And I think maybe part of that would be finding out how much it would cost, like the actual dollar amount and staff time for that. That might be something to have in hand. And then maybe a little bit of some, I really appreciate that you put some exact measurements in here. And I think you're right that there is plenty of space, but I'd love just some exact measurements of, with the deck there, how those things would connect.
All right. So, would you like to amend the motion to approve items A through C, excluding the request to move the kiosk in item C?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
and we will see you again.
Yes. When should I plan to do that?
We'll talk. Staff will reach out.
Okay.
When are you planning to put up the structure in front of the misery spot?
I mean, it really depends on my builders. Oh, in Misery?
Yeah.
That's being done right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that will be helpful for me to see.
Yeah. And there's I mean, this particular, the decking, is mostly about that step.
Mhm.
And if there's issue with the wall and the backing, we could just build essentially a deck with something a little more less obtrusive, like a roping around it, and then have tables and chairs on that decking instead of creating the bench, which is kind of what we're doing now.
Okay.
I get worried about levels and people, and I just know at night,
Servers falling over all the time.
servers falling, guests falling, pedestrians falling. I see people slip off that step all the time anyway, so.
I find it hard to visualize and didn't realize until this discussion that that is what was being proposed here. So
Yes.
it did catch me off guard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Laura.
Thank you. Am I
Thank you,
good?
Laura.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Welcome back, Jenny, for item D.
My glasses. Item. Sorry. Item D is Morning Light Bakery. I don't know, Ken, if you were here on Zoom. Ken brought in another diagram moving their approved space from council a little bit over more towards East Allen. We had talked about, he initially wanted to go down the hill a little bit, but now we're just keeping it at the 15 feet by 5 feet right on East Allen Street. I thought he was gonna be
I don't think he's on.
Ken is not with us tonight, Jim.
Okay, okay, thank you. So that's all it was. It was the same square footage. It's just shifted over towards the circle a little bit more than it was initially.
Do you know if that's just in part because it's more level there?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, he just felt that he wanted it more over.
Visible.
So, yeah, we had talked a
For a
lot about
variety of
this permit,
reasons. Yeah.
a lot of different proposed diagrams, but in the end, he settled on the space that I have outlined, 15.5. So it's just an update. There wasn't really anything, I just wanted everybody to be on the same page that that seating has moved.
So there's something on the map, in front of the entryway and the post that looks like it's crossed out.
Yeah, because initially he wanted to have seating there at the
Okay.
entranceway.
So that is, and just confirming, that is not part of this request.
Correct, so I crossed that out
Okay, great.
after discussing it with him.
Okay. It says maybe, so it was
Right.
confusing.
It is confusing. You know, like I said, we had talked a lot about different spaces, but that just wasn't feasible, right in front of the entrance to the building.
Okay.
Does the new spot take into consideration that light post? I think it might.
I think it's far enough away, but it's a good question.
Yeah, you know, we've been getting complaints about the outdoor seating and the light post on, is that West Allen? No.
Yeah.
In front of Mandarin rather. Anyhow, so I can't tell from this diagram, but would want to make sure that that 15 by 5 box isn't coming up against that and removing, you know, accessible path through.
I know when we had
Maybe
talked, he
that's
said there was
something
nothing
this-
impeding this space, but,
I think it's coming from.
There's this like light post here, and so I don't know exactly where the, like, if the goal is to cover up back to this brown corner, like that might be right up against it. But I do see the note here about the 4 to 5 feet.
But again, it might not account for the post.
right.
It's not like it's drawn on the map.
Yeah. Can we approve this, giving guidance back, or like, and documenting that to say that there has to be a path of, is it 4 feet is the width? At least 4 feet around that light post for pass through?
I think that'd be all right. I'm trying to do a measurement on the GIS map, which you're not supposed to do, but it's, it looks like they might have taken that to account, so. If it doesn't, then we can use that as a guidance back to them.
Okay. Are there any other concerns with this change request? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to approve item D with guidance to keep clearance around the light post?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. So now we have items E and F for the archives.
Yes. So the archives had received its permit. You had approved their liquor license. They're now seeking to have an outside consumption permit. Matt, are you on with us?
Not see Matt with us this evening,
Okay.
Jen.
Because there was discussion that I reached out to him about his measurements. So he has 80 square feet. It's actually a little bit more. He has 40 by 2, but it actually was 48 by 2 is what he was proposing. So that was a little bit different than the application indicated. But that matches up. He didn't specify that on the outside consumption, which I told him. he needs to specify a square footage, but, he was just thinking it was 40 by 2, because initially he did have it lower, and then he changed it to 48. And this diagram that he first brought into me was upside down, so the part at the top is where he sketched the diagram, that I was more able, I just couldn't picture where he was proposing.
I am struggling to understand where this is supposed to go.
It looks like it's it's still on the sidewalk between the trees.
Yes.
Like in here.
Yeah. So the door directly across from the door and then south of the door.
Oh, I see.
I don't know that this will have, it says 59 inches between the seating, but it's hard to tell if that's the seating in the door or the seating in the wall.
That was the seating from the wall, I believe.
So is this benches, not tables, right?
Right.
Okay.
But he did want to put, he was talking about putting some tables there.
Looks like.
This was a.
Oh, Eric
Because-
has something to add.
Yeah, sorry, I may be able to provide a little clarity on this. So in the original discussions that I had with Matt about the ability to put anything outside here, he was originally proposing to put seating on the curb side in front of the building and leave the clear space against the building's facade, which is what the computerized drawing is indicating. After discussions with him, we determined, and with other city staff, we determined that it would probably be safer to have the seating against the facade. So that's what the hand-drawn sketch at the top is indicating.
Okay.
But I believe he's still intending to use the same type of a layout that's in the computer drawing. So you'll notice the door is now in the hand-drawn portion on the left side with the decking coming off of that, then the clear space, and then the tree belt afterwards. So I think he's kind of combining his original proposal with the new proposal to put the seating against the building's facade.
Okay.
And there were going to be some tables. I know he talked about that. That's mentioned in the outside consumption. Placing tables along the building of the area.
Is what's proposed deep enough to still accommodate 4 feet ADA, like around the trees and the fire? Oh my gosh.
Hydrant.
Fire hydrant. Thank you.
He was.
So it should be that all the street amenities on that side are in the basically the granite tree belt. So the sidewalk space, the actual brick space on that location is, I think it's approximately 10 feet deep of brick from the facade of the building to the granite.
Okay.
So at 48 feet, you have 5 or 6 feet left over of clear space along that pathway.
Okay.
So hard to.
Just visualize.
It is very difficult to visualize using a Google Map image. I did have another question though about the outside consumption permit. It requests to go till midnight, but I feel like they all end at 11 p.m. usually.
He had crested 1, and I said, I don't know, just to let you know that they have not approved till 1 a.m. I thought we did Wicked Wings was 12.
I think so. I think that's how it ended.
Yeah. And so I said, maybe if you want to, so that's my writing,
Okay.
changing that after talking with him.
If we have given others midnight, I would go that high here. I would not go higher to 1.
Yeah. Agreed.
Any other questions on this one? Does someone want to make a motion to approve items E and F?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, and so on to items G and H for our house.
Okay. So our house and the applicants are here. Originally had filed an outside consumption permit that was approved and a sidewalk permit. The original sidewalk improvement, had 100 square feet, which I know when I had talked to them directly, it was more. It's more about 250 square feet. So what they did is they amended their outside consumption to include the frontage of 36 Main, which is about 250 feet, and then to have outside consumption, not a sidewalk permit, for the alleyway that is 34, that's known as 34 Main Street. It's a little alleyway, and there's an easement that goes through there, but they would, not for a sidewalk, but they're amending their outside consumption for that particular area. The sidewalk permit, they amended to be 250 square feet as opposed to the approved 100 square feet that we had approved earlier in March, I believe.
So is this then, I'm sorry, what is the difference, the number difference?
The number difference of the sidewalk permit is
Yeah.
150, because
Yeah.
they had put 100 on their sidewalk permit, realizing that that was probably a mistake, the 100,
Okay.
so it's more around 250. So
Do you guys want to come up too?
Before you do that, I think I'd like Eric to give a little more.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sure. So just to give you a little more backstory on this, and actually I'll just come over to the table here. Next to me. So for a little more backstory on this, I've been having some conversations with the owners and their attorney on this the sidewalk issue for this space, both in front of their storefront at 36 Main Street and the alleyway in front of 34 Main Street, in addition to how this all relates to the space that was the sidewalk use space for 30 Main Street. So the three properties are kind of looking at this collectively. So in conversations with the attorneys for our house, it was determined that they were going to be coming forward to amend their outside consumption permit to utilize the alley space itself. So that is private property. You would just be looking at the outside consumption for that specific space. In addition, because they were coming in for the outside consumption permit update, I recommended to their attorney that they also come in to amend the sidewalk use permit that you all would issue for outside consumption or for any use of the sidewalk itself. The reason being, there were some discrepancies in their original application and what was actually authorized through the outside consumption permit. And then also, I believe that meeting, there was also some confusion about what was actually being requested. And it appears from the original application that they had in fact requested the space in front of the alleyway at 34 Main Street. There was a diagram included with the original application, but the specific square footage, again, on the application and what was included with the outside consumption permit, they weren't all aligning. So I advised their attorney, or recommended to their attorney, that they should come in to clarify what the actual sidewalk use is being authorized by you all for their use. So we're looking at two separate pieces here, really. The outside consumption permit update for the alley space, and also kind of reconfirming what sidewalk use space they are granted based off of their original application and then the amended application. So that's a little bit more history or a little bit more backstory on what's happening here and why some of this is all before you tonight. And I'll let obviously the applicants are here so they can add any additional detail.
But you said the alley space is private, not public property.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
but it's, okay.
part of their
That's
lease.
a separately addressed space,
Mhm.
just happens to be an alley right now.
Okay.
So
Okay, well. Alright, so we've got our outside consumption, the alley, and then this adjustment to the sidewalk permit.
And then I additionally, I also forwarded you an email that I received, I believe yesterday or Saturday, sometime, about the space from the owners of 30 Main Street. So you should have that information as well.
Yeah, do you guys want to come up and introduce yourself and then talk more about that?
Hi, I'm Maggie Barch with Our House Bistro.
Welcome.
Thank you. So essentially, what we're trying to do is clarify both the outside consumption and the sidewalk permits so that they're accurate for the square footage and for the space that, you know, that the borders are set and the size is correct. Just because the outside consumption permit for the alley, I put almost the right amount of square footage. I didn't measure carefully enough. Went back and did that more accurately, but I didn't use the words the alley or 34 because at the time that I submitted the permit, we didn't actually realize that the alley had its own address. So that we just wanted to clarify that. I did talk to the DLC about that. It isn't specified on our outside consumption permit, and they said it seems like it's a clerical error and that we could continue to serve beverages there while this is pending and just to update them when we have that.
And so, if I'm understanding this correctly, because you are leasing this alley space now and that address.
Well, it's always been part of our lease space. We've only started just making use of it recently.
Okay. I guess, so the question is about where is the border then? You're saying the border is extended to where the Monkey House has been putting their tables?
Well, yeah, for it's been a few years we've been trying to get clarification on how the city decides what sidewalk spaces are allocated. You know, and we've gotten different answers over the years. In fact, I think it was the 2019 application that we put in. We had asked for the parking space because of COVID and because we with the restrictions so that you had to be 6 feet apart and could only serve outside, we were really at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, we were told that it was really you could whatever you asked for on your permit was what you were awarded. And it didn't really have to do with boundaries. So we had asked for 350 square feet, and we're approved for that, and we're given the parking space, which was rescinded and taken back in June. So we were back down to having limited space. So after that, we found that, or at least it was represented to us, that it's based on property lines, which made a whole lot more sense to us. So knowing that, we knew that we could also ask for what was in front of that alley space, because that is leased space by us. And I don't think, you know, to give everyone, I don't think anyone understood exactly where the lines could be drawn or how that they were allocated. So I think we're all a little confused about how that works.
I have always thought that it is the store frontage that determines the borders, right?
So the actual municipal code just says that any business can request sidewalk space adjacent to their business. It doesn't have any detail on where the limitations are.
That's true, because we let Papa Frank's extend beyond their frontage.
So it ultimately is your decision as council to authorize the use of the sidewalk space as city property.
All right.
Yeah, and for us, we have 3 picnic tables in front of our space, and our neighbors all have 4 or more, 6 or 8 on the far ends. So what we're looking for is just a fair piece of the sidewalk, and if it is delineated by store frontage, that alley space is part of our lease space, so that we should have a right to that space.
So has Monkey House paid the city for that space?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have, they've obviously paid for space. I believe their application also requested 250 square feet, so I don't know what the dimensions of that actually looks like on the ground. So that I'm not clear on.
Gotcha. Because that would really be my concern, is if we're taking away something they've already paid for.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, when the permit in 2019, we'd asked for 300 square feet, we did pay for that as well. And when it was rescinded, that wasn't amended, or we weren't given a refund or anything like that. So I just like to point that out, that if we, just making a point, I guess.
There's
Yeah.
I follow.
Yeah.
Utilizing the alley space, would that give you equitable or more space than the other restaurants that are on that road?
I don't think that it's fair to consider our leased space, what the city allocates to, for sidewalk space. So I don't think that, we're not comparing the inside space of the Monkey House or to the Mule Bar to the inside of our House Bistro, so I don't think that that necessarily applies.
I'm just trying to determine outdoor space, because you had mentioned that other people have more tables, so I'm trying to verify if you're
On the
gonna get more
sidewalk, yeah.
tables with your
On-
alleyway.
Yeah, on the sidewalk, they have more outside space. The folks on each end just have the benefit of having that bump out. So that's why they have more space and,
Well, and I do want to be careful about when we talk about equitable access to sidewalk, like, that bump out is a bonus to that area. And I don't want us to think we're in a position where we have to take the square footage of this block and then divvy it up by the individual businesses there. Like, there should be some correlation to the frontage. Because as somebody who has served, that also will make sense for operations. I know, like, we gave Papa Frank's additional sidewalk frontage on their street. Nobody else was using that at the time either, so we don't have a hard and fast rule to follow. That said, I feel like using the property line as the marker between the two makes sense. But I don't know when we approved the sidewalk usage space for Monkey, or when it's up again.
If I may, my name's Matt, I own a bar house as well. And if you look up the permit, Maggie showed it to me online the other day, the Monkey House permit clearly states that it's directly in front of their business.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say anything about extra space. It says directly in front of their space. So directly in front of their space is directly in front of their space,
Yeah.
not to the side. Regardless if it's more or less, because there's been more or less over the years for all the businesses. And our application said approximately 100 square foot, approximately. We've had more in the past, like Maggie said, that's taken away from us, and we've had less. And I don't want an inch more or an inch less, I just want directly in front of my space.
I do want to make clear for the record, though, that the little parklet space wasn't, like, taken away. It was always granted on a temporary basis.
That wasn't made clear. So I certainly didn't understand that when I put in my sidewalk permit. I was approved for 350 square feet. And the way I had applied, I had said we would be open to that 350 square feet being a parking space if the city decided that that was a good use of that space.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, the city was talking about blocking off that whole street.
Yeah.
To make it a little kiosk, but some people objected and that didn't happen. But that would have been nice and an attraction for the city and other businesses, but regardless, that's what we just wanted it to be. Square, fair table, because
Yeah.
at the time, we couldn't seat indoors. And when they have tables 6 feet apart, we went to one table.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Mule Bar had that whole upper side that wasn't straight off their building, just like the Keys. So like I said, not an inch more, not an inch less, which I just want what I'm paying taxes on my property and to try to run the business successfully.
Yep, and I mean, as you said, there are different amenities to the streetscape for leases, and so I think that, I don't think comparing the bump out is appropriate here. I mean, I think the biggest question is we can't have a permit, we can't approve 2 permits that use the same space and charge both people for that. So if we already have a permit approved for Monkey House that shows them using that space, that's a problem. If we don't, then I agree that our ordinance says you can petition for space adjacent to your property. It doesn't say you can petition for space adjacent to someone else's property, someone else's business. So I think when both people would petition for space adjacent to their business, the property line is the most unbiased way to make that choice. So I think if that would be my preference for moving forward, is if we actually have not already permitted that sidewalk space in front of 34, that we approve this
Do you know the date, Eric, by any chance?
So I don't know offhand. I know the original application for Our House came in at the April 4th meeting. And I believe, but I'm not positive, that the Monkey House application came in the meeting prior. And to the point that Matt had just made, yeah, he is correct in that the outside consumption permit for Monkey House does indicate the space directly in front of their storefront, similar to the way Our House's current permit reads as well. However, I don't know what their sidewalk use application said. So similarly, they may have requested more space, but I don't know what they actually said in their application, but that should be included with the agenda when that meeting.
It's like 250 square feet.
And if I
Jenny,
may,
are you able to,
Yeah.
thank you.
Our picture of our application had the alleyway in front. We submitted a picture for the space we're asking for,
That's not-
which we have copies of.
All right, we'll see if Jenny can pull up the existing one. I'm also looking on our website.
We have printed copies, and you can find it online.
Oh, I'm sorry, for what Monkey already was approved for.
Is it different than what we just approved it as written in the February agenda?
You found the one in the February agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty sure it came in.
It doesn't really say.
No, we weren't getting maps at this point.
Yes, in February.
Oh, yeah. So this, I do have the old sidewalk one for Our House here, which includes a description of the alley front outside. So we did already approve this sidewalk usage space.
Did we though? I thought there was an issue.
Oh, did we take it back?
I think we took.
Yeah,
it
yeah,
back.
yeah, sorry.
I don't think we actually, I think that was not done. The outdoor consumption permit matches the sidewalk permit that we approved for Monkey House, 250 square feet, as you say, directly in front of 30 Main Street.
Did you find that one?
Yeah, it's right here. So it's roped-in area directly in front of storefront at 30 Main Street on the
Okay.
sidewalk area, upper and lower, approximately 25 by 10. We approved it until 2 a.m. unless we adjusted that. So I don't know.
It was proposed to take back, but it wasn't taken back in the meeting for the space, and that's why we provided the picture that was approved. It wasn't
Well, it looks to me like there's not a conflict then, because we have given them the Monkey House, what's in front of their store frontage, and then you have this address for this alley space. So there's a property line delineator now. Does that make sense to everyone? Any other concerns from staff? Okay.
They are going to be upset.
So am I.
Just point it out on council, they're gonna have to face the run when they come in.
I can take that. Does someone want to make a motion to approve items G and H?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Jim, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Did you say aye? You're abstaining? Okay. Motion carries. Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you guys for your time.
This brings us to the end of our liquor control meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. I'm just going to take a quick 5 before we start the council meeting. We will start at 7:05 p.m. 7:04. Let's call this regular meeting of the Winooski City Council to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Deputy Mayor Jim Duncan.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Looks like we're muted.
Oh, good. Okay, sorry, I just called the meeting to order. We are on to agenda review. Do we need to remove item B?
Yes, you can table it.
Okay, we will table item B on the traffic calming policy for a future meeting. Any other questions, concerns about the agenda tonight?
Was it the only change?
Yes. Okay. Moving on to public comment. This is a chance for members of the public in attendance to speak to items not on tonight's agenda. If you're here for something that is included in the agenda, please wait till we reach that item. If there is anyone here who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or the chat to let us know. Okay. We have our consent agenda tonight. We have our council minutes from June 6, payroll warrant 529 to 611, accounts payable warrant of 615, and an event permit application for the High Street Block Party. Are there any questions or concerns about any consent agenda items? Okay.
Sound ordinance,
What about it?
just curious, is that 10 PM? I can't remember.
I think it's 10 on weeknights, 11 on weekends,
Okay,
I believe.
okay. Great, then no.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, council reports. Thomas, can I start with you?
You can. Not much to report, and Elaine, sorry if you were going to talk about this, but a reminder that tomorrow there's another Winooski Wednesday. It will be starting at 5 p.m. in Rotary Park, ending at around 8. It's free. Everybody's welcome to attend. Great music in a local market. And then also on Sunday is French Heritage Day in Winooski. That's going to be adjacent to the farmers market. That's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And there will be a tortillerie contest. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. And there are instructions if you go to downtownwinooski.org in terms of submitting to the contest.
Thank you.
I have nothing to report.
All right. A couple of small things. Thursday, Planning Commission, public hearing on priority housing incentives. They had one already last month. This is the second hearing. I think some language has been changed. Would encourage members of the public to attend that if you want to weigh in on incentivizing priority housing in our community or zoning and land use regulations. Finance Commission met last week and looked at historic data on city expenses, revenue, population growth, and a couple of other items in service of a discussion around TIF planning. They're going to be revisiting that at probably their July meeting, if not August. I was invited to participate in the search committee for the Burlington Airport Director position. So, nice way to include Winooski in that process as they bring someone new on board. We had one meeting so far though, so no fresh updates.
Okay.
And a big thank you to staff, Downtown Winooski City Partners, for the second annual Juneteenth event. Bryn.
Sure. The Infrastructure Commission met on the 16th. We had a last minute change of schedule. We were anticipating guests from Green Mountain Power, Efficiency Vermont, and Vermont Gas to come and speak to the different programs that are available to businesses, to institutions, so school and municipal buildings, as well as to residents. And it was just a little bit last minute to try and coordinate getting everyone there, and that was a preference, so we are postponing that
until July 21st, which will be the next meeting. We are meeting in person. We've been meeting at the pool. It's a great, the public space there. It's really nice to have that. Everybody was really appreciative of being back in person. So the remainder of the meeting, we talked about capital project updates, the progress with VTrans, and the work on East Allen. We also talked about the wayfinding, which should be installed, I think this week or next, pretty soon. And the work plan and next steps for the work plan following council's priorities. So there was good discussion about that. And I think there's interest in getting some feedback from the council on what direction we would like them to take for next steps on the energy component. As it's written in the strategic priorities, it's pretty broad and is inclusive of renewable energy. And I believe right now we don't have any work around city goals for energy, achieving energy reduction, energy efficiency. So just looking for some additional guidance on what we would like them to focus on. I recommended thinking about the communities grant because that's available for the next 18 months with Efficiency Vermont and focusing on that. And then H518, which was legislation passed for energy resiliency through the state. And that will also be in the more immediate near future rather than longer term. But again, wanted to relay that back that they're looking for some additional guidance from us as well. And I think that's that really was the bulk of it. So our next meeting is July 21st. And then I also wanted to mention Chittenden Solid Waste District, which I'm the commissioner for. We're having our annual organizational meeting tomorrow evening. Available in person in Williston at the Williston City Hall, I believe, or online for Zoom. All the public information for that is online. And that annual meeting just re-elects the chair, board, and all of those other officer roles, appointments to committees and whatnot. So, yeah, that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Safe, Healthy, Connected People ended up not meeting this month, but our next meeting is going to be on July 12th, and I believe the plan right now is that the library committee is going to visit and kind of talk about some of the work they've been doing. So, the Inclusion and Belonging Commission, we're hoping to really get off the ground, doing some final coordinating around time, meeting and getting the new commission members' orientation packets tomorrow morning. So hopefully there'll be some additional updates from that coming soon.
All right, thank you. Elaine, city updates.
Yes, thank you. City updates. The city is looking to fill a few paid positions, including a new Recreation Operations AmeriCorps member, city treasurer, water resources equipment operator 2, and code enforcement officer. To learn more or to apply, go to winooskibt.gov/jobs or call City Hall at 802-655-6410. City Council is also looking to appoint volunteers to city commissions. These are the Finance Commission, Planning Commission, Development Review Board, not a commission, Winooski Commission for Inclusion and Belonging, Safe, Healthy, Connected People Commission, and the Municipal Infrastructure Commission. For more information, you can visit winooskibt.gov, hover on the Government tab, and click on Boards, Commissions, or Committees, or you can call City Hall at 802-655-6410. If you've never served on a board or a commission before, we will support you through this process as best we can. We encourage people who've never interacted with government to apply. A reminder that the COVID-19 testing clinic at the O'Brien Community Center ends after this Saturday, June 25th. You can still get tested this week. You can also pick up free at-home tests at this clinic until this Saturday, or through this Saturday. The remaining hours are Wednesday and Friday, 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., and Thursday and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. For those of you who are not aware, Winooski's Equity Director, Yasmin Gordon, resigned effective June 10th. We are dismayed by her departure, but consider it an opportunity to take stock and rethink how we approach equity as Winooski government. Winooski has taken some great steps, and thanks to Yasmin's dedication over the past year, we have some great tools with which to move forward. For my part, this news and conversations I've had with Yasmin has heightened my own commitment to equity for Winooski. So if you have any questions about this position or what the city is doing, feel free to reach out to me, 655-6410, or get in touch with the city councilor. And stay tuned for more updates this year.
Thank you. So we are moving on to our regular items, and up first, item A is on for discussion or approval, the park and inventory analysis and management plan.
All right, thank you very much. I believe Jason Charest with the Regional Planning Commission is online, so Paul, if you can bring him over, that would be great. Tonight we are here to bring you back the updated draft of the parking inventory analysis and management plan. This was reviewed in detail with you all at your regular meeting on April 18th. So there were several comments that were provided at that meeting, specifically related to electric vehicle charging and some additional details on some of the mapping. So that information has been updated in this latest document. The one caveat I would add to that is, I believe was mentioned at that meeting as well, the scope of this project did not necessarily include a more detailed look at electric vehicle charging and the options around that. So that section is not as robust as some of the others, but it's definitely something that the city can, a direction you all can move in if you would like. So the reason we're here before you tonight is to have you all consider approval of this document. The final draft was included, or the updated draft was included in your agenda packet along with the appendices. The approval, if you do choose to approve, that doesn't necessarily hold you to any one policy or recommended action here. It's really more of a framework that we would then use to get more detailed information on the policies or the actions that would be going forward. But this at least gives us a place to start and to kind of establish what some of the more potentially either shorter term or longer term policies may be. So I will leave it at that and open up to any questions, or if Jason has anything he would like to add. If he's with us.
I'm with you. I'm all set. I think you summarized it quite well, Eric.
Oh, sorry. One other thing I wanted to add. The reason why we're bringing it to you tonight is also related to closeout of the project. With the fiscal year coming up, we want to make sure that we're not missing any deadlines for the RPC as they're trying to get their books in order. So, and we are also trying to get our books in order. So that's obviously not the driving factor, but definitely something we wanted to be cognizant of bringing this to you tonight.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, the only question that I was going to have was just in regards to electric vehicle charging, but it sounds like even if we approve tonight, we can continue to explore those options.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is probably a much bigger discussion because that is, so really what we're looking at in a lot of the information with the study is both the public side of things, which is the on-street space, and the private side of things, which is with what's happening with development. So as we think about the public realm of parking, electric vehicle charging could be one of the ways you all choose to manage that space, and I think is going to be a much bigger policy discussion from your end because of I think the ongoing maintenance infrastructure costs and just the capital component to all that. Or it could be something that we try to push more towards the private side as well, to encourage more developments that are more of the redevelopments to include that type of infrastructure, so it's being addressed.
So it does tend to negate the ability for, so when I hear you say that, to me it sounds like that development really is private and wouldn't be available to folks that are patrons and for economic vitality reasons.
That's a good question, and I think that would come down to how it's actually managed on the site. I mean, I know there are some depending on the actual project, generally speaking, I believe with the commercial building energy standards, and you may know more about this than I know there is a certain threshold that they do need to include EV chargers, or at least the infrastructure, but I don't know if those need to be made public or not.
There's no obligation.
So I know that, but they at least need to have the infrastructure in place for the development.
Yeah, my concern is I worry that Winooski's gonna miss out on economic vitality opportunities by not offering or preparing to offer that infrastructure.
Sure.
So I appreciate the thought that needs to go into it, and I caution us from putting it too much onto private developments to address that need.
Yeah, and I think just because, thank you for the comments, I think also to that point, just because we don't get into a deep dive in this document, that shouldn't preclude you all from having those conversations from a policy level.
I'll also comment that John, the old work director, had tossed around other ideas that would be in public spaces. It could be that we do an RFP and ask for a private provider to do that. We could put if we wanted to avoid the cost ourselves. Of course, we can still consider putting them and managing them ourselves. And just to reassure everyone, there's the whole phenomenon of they're empty and then everything else is full. In the ramp-up phase, we could say that if no one's parked there, any car can park there to avoid some of that. So it's not, it's something that we've been discussing. And Paul's got his hand up.
Sorry to interrupt. Elaine, if you wouldn't mind just moving a couple paces closer to the microphone or vice perfect.
Okay.
I think I can hear you now.
All right.
Thank you.
Should I repeat anything?
Jason, did you get most of that?
I got some of it. I had to turn up my volume and kind of really pay attention, but I think I got the gist.
Can they hear the counselors? Can you hear the counselors okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for the context. I do think there's benefit to having a dedicated conversation, and whether or not you want to push that onto a committee or a future study. I think there are a number of municipalities that we can look to for experience, best practices, things to consider. But I would hate for us to miss an opportunity to enhance the vibrancy and economic vitality. We do have some unique one-time funds that could be attributed to that, to such a project, so just want to keep it in the mix. As far as things about the report specifically, I did notice, I'm just going to be really picky and I apologize, in the appendix C4 there's reference to a document and in parentheses it just says error, so I would want that corrected before we finalize the document that's put into the record. And then I just also wanted to, a question for clarification. With the survey, I think I was unsure if it was presented as though the data was statistically significant or not.
No, it is not statistically significant. It wasn't a statistically significant sample.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay, so you're saying in the report it's not clear if it is or is not statistically significant.
I think in the appendix in C2, it says is a non-statistical representation. I just want to make sure that that is very much apparent in the in maybe the executive summary, so that stands out.
Okay. What was the first appendix that you said you had the?
See, page C4.
And I don't think that's being picky, that's just, that's something that we missed, so thank you for correcting.
Sure. That's all I had.
Anyone else have any questions, concerns?
I just want to have a question on what approval in this case means. So you're looking for acceptance of this as the final report with the minor edits?
That's correct, yes.
So not endorsement of these as the plans?
That's correct,
Clearly
yep.
So we're just accepting the report, not endorsing the implementation path?
That's correct, yes. Similar to the what has been done with past reports like the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, yes.
So would it be reasonable for someone to make a motion to approve acceptance of this plan with 2 edits, the document link in appendix C4, and a note of the lack of statistical significance of the web survey in section 2.3?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so we tabled item B, we are on to item C. This is on for discussion or approval, a sales tax reallocation request.
So Bill is here from Nettie. Bill, you want to introduce your request? Paul, you might need to bring him over.
How's everyone doing?
Good. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. So this is I saw John's name on it, so I was thinking he was going to introduce it, and it was going to save you having to listen to me, but I'm happy to introduce it to you quickly. This is a request that we're making to file a joint application with the city for sales tax reallocation. This is the Vermont Downtown Program by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. They have a July 1 application deadline where they allow projects that are in designated downtowns and village centers to seek a number of different grants and tax credits, one of which is the opportunity to take sales taxes from private development projects that are collected by the state and then reallocate them to the city to be used for infrastructure in support of the project. So 2 years ago, I provided council a memo about this, so I'm happy to just answer questions about it. But for the public's benefit, 2 years ago, we applied for and were successful in receiving a partial award of funding under this program. And our intent would be to go back in this round seeking the amounts that we did not get in the first round because they were short funding, and also make an adjustment to the original application to reflect the new higher costs and therefore higher sales tax receipts from the project as a result of COVID-related cost escalations. And these funds would then be used to assist for the payment of the so-called public improvements, the garage, sidewalks, streets, in the same manner as the original application. The state requires the city to apply for these. Last time around, Heather and I did the application together. This time, the thought process is that I'll update it with John's feedback, and we'd be looking to file this for July 1. And a required attachment is some proof or evidence from the municipal body that they have authorized the application. So there's no specific resolution required of you other than some evidence by minutes of a meeting that you have authorized the city to apply.
Thank you, Bill. So, question for you. It wasn't clear to me from your memo whether you took into account that the population actually changed, and so for Winooski, so now you're only eligible for taxes paid on sales of construction materials exceeding 200,000 as opposed to 100,000.
I have not filled out the application yet, Elaine, so I can't, if that has shifted since the original application, we'd obviously have to honor that, you know, in terms of how we make the calculation and final. We're not required to have a dollar amount listed in the authorization. So the thought process is that we would get the revised construction cost estimates from due construction next week, and then fill out the application with the appropriate amount removed. So if that base allocation has changed, obviously it'll impact the amount of the increase that we can ask for. But given that we were not able, I believe it was something in the vicinity of $160,000 or $200,000 that wasn't awarded the first time, and we're expecting the new number to be a few $100,000 higher. So I think, sadly, if the base is now 200 rather than 100, it would mean that we would have to make that adjustment. But I still think there would be a significant benefit in asking for this additional funds.
Okay, just want to make sure you saw that because it does change the math quite a bit.
Fair enough, and I hadn't seen it yet, so thank you.
Any other questions on this? Any public comment? All right.
Sorry, one more.
Yeah.
So just for the public's benefit, we have not received any other requests for this grant, and we haven't heard of, we're not actually aware of any projects that will be eligible. So that's why we brought council this one.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm not familiar with this particular program, so I'm curious if there's any, because it's being dedicated to this particular project, if that removes the excess of those funds to other things that would be, that we would need to, that we would be prioritizing.
Right, that's why I made that comment. So since this is new to y'all, it's annual, and this one's due July 1. So if we hadn't heard of anything, if no one's asked us, and we went through the possibilities, there literally isn't anything else that's eligible, so it's not removing eligibility for someone else.
Okay. Well,
No, we haven't heard of them.
thank you.
We've also, like, the sales tax reallocation has always been under discussion as part of this project too, from years before. Anyone want to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
All right, so item D is on for discussion, Lot 7D request regarding Next Vermont Community Development Program grant round.
So this one is a little tricky because obviously we are supportive of this project as the city. This is the same project. They've asked for council to provide some early indication of support for a Vermont Community Development Program grant for the September round. And I'll definitely let Bill make the case. Unfortunately, I've advised council not to express that early support, at least now, because we did just hear today that the O'Brien Community Center project that we are joint applicants with Champlain Housing Trust was not awarded for the spring round. And so it would be the staff's recommendation to support that for September because we anticipate being ready by then. There was some decision points that we weren't able to confirm for the interview committee during the spring interview, which is why they decided not to award us this time. They encouraged us to apply in September, and they indicated, you know, you never know, there's no promises, but they would probably be favorable if those decision points were taken care of. And Champlain Housing Trust thinks that we will have those resolved by then. So that's why in my memo I advised council not to provide this early indication of support to Nettie. Ask Bill to make the case for himself.
I'm assuming that only one city project can get the grant.
It's highly competitive, so that's the challenge, is we would be competing against ourselves.
And this is something Bill might get into, this is specific, what he's asking our support for specifically for the hotel, it's not necessarily for the possible housing that we've discussed, correct?
Bill, did you hear that question?
I did. I didn't realize it was directed to me. I'm sorry. That's correct. In meeting with the state there and the staff and reviewing with John and Heather at the time, the various ways in which you can seek Vermont Community Development Program funding, it was thought that a grant in support of the low and moderate income jobs that would be created by the hotel would be the most competitive application point. So I think it goes without saying that it's the city that's placed the highest priority on the hotel in order to proceed. So I think one can reasonably say that to the extent one is supporting the hotel getting off the ground, one's supporting all of it. But the thought process was that the highest score the place of highest competitiveness would be to look at this as an economic development grant rather than a housing grant, because it is the housing portion of this funding that is the most competitive, because it has the most the highest number of projects that are in need available.
And for some background, I don't know when we looked at this last, but there was this project, O'Brien Center, and some elder care project, and we had ranked them, and the O'Brien Center one met more of our goals as a community, which is why we chose to get behind that one in the first place.
So I'm not sure when it's appropriate for me to say a few things about the application.
Go for it, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So just to be clear, so a couple of things. One, Madam Mayor, you're correct. This is not the first time we've raised it. Obviously, this has been part of the thinking about the process for some time. You're allowed to ask for up to $1 million in support of projects in general, and the city received a $500,000 allocation early in the process in support of the garage, and it was always sort of the working contemplation, at least in my view, that as the project developed and got closer to being ready to move forward, there might be additional funds that are sought. It's not, in my professional experience working around the state, it's not unusual for us to seek multiple applications for different parts of projects. For example, I'm in the process of seeking a second $500,000 grant in support of a single building renovation in Springfield that was awarded funds last year. Oftentimes, because things are so competitive, there's a desire on the part of the state to not see a lot of $1 million applications all at once, so that the funds can be dispersed in a more reasonable way. A couple things I want to make super clear. One is that I wasn't aware that the funds for the O'Brien Center were not awarded at the time that we made this request. So we obviously still want to try to look at any opportunities we can to apply in September, but to the extent that it does change the calculus that O'Brien wasn't awarded, this body made clear that that was your priority before, and this wasn't intended to revisit or try to change that decision in any way. It was simply us saying, okay, we think it may be our turn. Can we have some indication from you that we're next in line behind them, so that we can start thinking about this? I mean, I think the best path forward at this point would be we weren't looking for a specific vote or decision at this point anyway, just to discuss whether it was still the case that we were next in line. Cities can ask for more than one grant, but not for more than $1 million in any round. So I don't know how much funding O'Brien will be seeking in the fall, but it's not out of the question that the city could ask for both. And if they're not in the same direct lane of request, they may or may not be competitive. So all we would ask is that we be allowed to continue the discussion so that we can make sure we're maximizing our opportunity to get this moving forward. We don't want to do anything that would jeopardize your commitment to O'Brien, obviously.
Thanks for that, Bill.
Bill, I was wondering, so this $500,000 grant, if you were to get it, is how much closer is that moving you all towards breaking ground and actually starting to build?
Well, I think that I think it's safe to say that we're pursuing a number of avenues to get the project over the goal line. You know, they don't all have to come through, but it would be a blow, certainly, to not pursue this, because I think our likelihood of receiving it was high. We check a lot of boxes, and the types of jobs that will be created and the types of positions that would likely, you know, the ability of these jobs. Our manager in this case currently employs folks from 21 different countries, you know, highly functionally committed to wanting to see these jobs, you know, stay in Winooski and support folks who live here. So I think all of those things would resonate well with the needs and goals of this program, which are to support low and moderate income jobs. So I think it's a strong application, you know, and so I always want to submit applications I think will be well received. You know, is it possible that we'll be able to find other avenues? Yes, but this is certainly one of the top 2 or 3 things we were hoping to use to close some gaps in funding that, you know, sadly are a few $1 million more than they were a couple of years ago.
And then another question, this one might be more to you, Elaine. If both groups were to apply, is what your belief is that the hotel would get the funding and not the O'Brien Center?
Well, I haven't gotten any definitive information on that. It's possible the other way could also happen.
Okay.
Or if Bill's right, then maybe they would both be awarded for it partially. So it's something that I would have to look into.
Right, and just so I'm being clear, I don't have any specific insight into how the board would make its decision. I'm just saying that I'm not aware that there's a specific prohibition on number of applications as opposed to a dollar amount. But there may be many practical reasons why you don't want to do that, and you know, obviously my point is that if I had known this information last week, I would have met with Elaine and discussed it before it was here. So, you know, perhaps best that if it's the feeling of the room that you remain interested in having us be next in line after them, then I think that's plenty of information for us to work with Elaine and staff to see what is possible and come back to you with something else.
I think that sounds like a good approach. See some head nods from council. We had this on for discussion anyhow, so
yeah, fair enough.
glad it was helpful though.
I have a different opinion, I guess.
Sure.
I'm a little frustrated here that our application for Bryan Center was not considered thorough enough to be awarded. So it feels like a lost opportunity, in my opinion. Whereas if we had put forth 2 applications, then one of them might have been awarded. So part of me feels like, why don't we put 2 forward and let the board decide, or the committee decide which they see as most viable, rather than losing another opportunity. You know, there's no assurances we'll get the money at all, but I don't know. To me, more shots on goal, the more likely it is for you to get a goal, rather than just taking 1 shot. So that's just my difference of opinion.
And that's why I asked that question about if they both submit. I do wonder if we submit for one, like you said, if we submit for one and it doesn't get it, would the other one possibly receive the grant?
And I think an argument can be made, a case could be made, that with increased workforce opportunities, we need increased housing and increased services. And I think the projects could be complementary to each other in a way. I don't know that we want to make that case, but it's just, again, for discussion.
That's fair. I think staff can have that discussion and chat with Bill and the team about it. Like I said, this isn't on here for a vote tonight. It's not actually warned for a vote. Yeah.
I guess I just want to maximize the opportunity to get some money.
Duly noted. Let's move on to item E. This is on for discussion approval,
Thanks,
the
Bill.
aerial fire truck bid award.
Gonna bring reinforcements. I think we've done introductions. Chief Palmer, Fire Marshal, I'm not sure if, just wanted to make sure that we've done those introductions, so appreciate him coming tonight. So as outlined in the memo, this has been a multi-year kind of process for us. This is certainly one of the biggest type processes that any department or community will or should take. It's a big purchase. It's big planning. And as outlined in the memo, I feel we've done our due diligence internally and with external vendors. By having internal staff meetings, having several demo trucks here in the city and setting them up, going to Massachusetts for a 16-hour day, traveling and just really trying to absorb what's out there, and putting out the RFP. We targeted three vendors who we spent time with. I mean, obviously Sutphen's been here in this community for 30 years, served us very well. E1 and then Pierce, and also directly sent it to Toyne through a contact, and then posted it through the city's process and procedures on the bid, on the bid board. Angela would know that name. I don't, because I don't post those, right? We did receive two bids back. I outlined that. We're not sure why Pierce didn't bid it. They do have equipment here in the area, in other communities that are close to us with Essex and South Burlington. Again, we spent time with them, so we were a bit disappointed that we didn't see a bid from them. At the end of the day, that's out of our control. I feel we got two bids, two proposals, both met the minimum qualifications, and it really came down to how we can best plan for the future, address our height need, going from 70 feet to 100, and the 5 points that I listed in the memo as far as the community needs, the department needs, serviceability, and cost, obviously. So they're pretty close in cost. It really came down to the functionality of the truck, and that's why the recommendation is to move forward with E1. How we move forward is obviously to hopefully get approval to award the contract, draft the contract, get it signed, and then there will be, and I believe Angela's on, but future, and Elaine, future conversations about, we don't pay for this till we get it. So there'll be an opportunity to talk about prepayment. There'll be those opportunities for you all to have as far as what's, what the best avenue for the city is there. And I guess I'll stop there and welcome questions.
Thank you, Chief.
I have some questions. So was this, as I was reading through the memo, it sounded like the bid request was directly sent to companies that you're familiar with that build the technology, that build the truck and equipment. Is that right?
So we sent it directly to companies, yes, that we're familiar with, Obviously, we're all Sutphen here, so we've never had an E1 here. We've never had Pierce. So again, working with other departments and going and spending time with those vendors to understand their equipment.
So it wasn't put out for public bid?
Yes.
It was, it was posted to the public bid registry, the Vermont Public Bid Registry, and posted to our website on our bid page.
Okay, that was a point of clarification that I wanted. Okay, that's helpful, thank you. I had just, other questions I had were, as we look at centralizing, some of our response services in the region, just curious how this purchase might play into that, or, you know, if there's any anticipation of what that contribution look like, if there's any shared, funding, I guess.
So I think there's a couple questions there. You know, certainly, you know, we have, the city has, and I certainly have the central regional thought process in mind. As you know, that doesn't come easy. Emergency services are very territorial, if you will. I believe a purchase like this positions Winooski better to have those conversations by not just having a very specific, like just a ladder truck. This is a very multifaceted piece of equipment. I mean, we refer to it as first due. It can respond to any fire call first due. And I believe that positions this community very well to have those conversations in the future.
And then thinking about, I think it was mentioned in here, about having sufficient staff trained to run the equipment, to use the equipment. How many of your team are needed to operate the truck?
So through the whole design process, I guess to tell you how we operate today is, you know, it's very truck specific, if you will, meaning an engine company and a ladder company. And we wanted to make sure, when I say multifaceted piece of equipment, you know, instead of needing 4 or 5 or 6 people to get those 2 pieces of apparatus on the road, 2 to 3, I mean, minimum. We would like more, obviously, but 3 people can operate this piece of equipment and respond to as initial responders on a regular basis on this truck.
Does it fit in?
It absolutely fits. You know, we spent, that's, you laugh at me, we looked at a truck that we were very interested in, that Sutphen makes, but it was 12'8", so that's almost a foot taller than our firehouse. So I didn't feel that, and it happens, and I didn't want to be that fire chief that orders a truck that won't fit in his or her firehouse. So, you know, we're very confident in the size of this truck. We know it will fit in the firehouse when it arrives. So.
Okay. I don't know if it was in the memo. A warranty, is that included, or is that an add-on?
Yes, all the major players have standard warranties on this truck. You know, there's 20-year warranties on the frame and in the components, major components. You know, each vendor offers different. You know, in the chassis comes engine. It's like buying your car, right? I mean, there's different. The drivetrain has said, the engine, you know, has said, the aerial device will have said warranty. So they're similar, but they are different in what they offer. And again, the 20-year minimum, you know, the frame and aerial device on this truck, or 165,000 miles, you know, in that range. And the truck we just sold that was here for 25 years had 41,000 miles on it. So I think we'll be looking at the 20-year you know, warranty pieces. Yeah.
So is that included in the price that
Yes.
was good? Okay, great.
Yeah, it'll come standard with the package. Okay. Or with the purchase.
Thanks. Those are my questions.
You just mentioned you sold one, and then there's a separate trade in here.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
So we were a 3-truck set.
Yeah.
So again, staffing, right? I mean, we were The truck, the 1995 pumper that was up for replacement, we sold to Marlboro, Vermont. And I mentioned that because they upgraded 30 years by buying our 25-year-old truck, so they're pretty happy. We're pretty happy at serving another Vermont community. And then upon delivery of this truck, the aerial device would be, it's a trade-in. So within 30 days of us getting the new truck, getting trained on it, our current apparatus would leave. I don't have to worry, the community doesn't have to worry about trying to resell it. I really wanted it to be, they're not easy to sell.
Well, I'm glad there's that overlap there.
So to be clear, we're now 2 truck set.
That's correct. And we will now, moving forward, will be a 2-truck set.
Well, glad to see that your needs were met by the low bidder and you can get service much more closely than the previous situation.
Yes.
Other questions from others?
I'm assuming, but I just want to ask, E1 is going to come and provide all of the training for you and your team?
Yes.
They'll provide 3 days of training for all staff.
Is there, given the territorial tendencies of emergency services, is it worthwhile to open that up to neighboring municipalities to cross-train?
So certainly, locally, we cross-train currently, with St. Mike's and others. And for us, with like Burlington, their whole fleet is E1. So, if this is awarded to E1, the interoperability, it's not like we're going to go drive their trucks. They're not going to drive our trucks. But how we operate on the scenes, setups, are similar, that sort of thing. So the interoperability piece is that of how the trucks function, because they do function a little differently in 18-foot jack spread compared to 11, and just understanding the manufacturers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the aerial fire truck bid award to E1?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could, I would like to just publicly state, Sutphen family, it is a family-owned business. Again, they've served this community for, 30 years very strongly, and Dingy Machine Company out of New Hampshire. It's been a very difficult decision for us to understand the process took us to another vendor. We still have a Sutphen engine here that needs to serve this community, and our full intention is to continue to foster that relationship with Sutphen, and just want to show that appreciation for that family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
On to item F, updated COVIS business recovery grant guidelines.
That's gonna be me. So the city council had approved in January the use of about $100,000 of the American Rescue Plan Act funding to be used for business recovery efforts. And on May 2nd, you reviewed 3 applications and awarded $20,000. The discussion at that time was to come back with a slightly revised set of guidelines based on some feedback that we received from downtown Winooski and local businesses to go out for a second round of grant awards. So the revised guidelines were included in your packet. We have streamlined the purpose section to remove some duplicative language that's found later in the document. We have included an exemption for businesses that are ineligible for the Economic Recovery Bridge Program through the state. That was some feedback that we received from downtown Winooski. Under ineligible activities, we actually had this guideline reviewed by the Vermont Persons of Color Business Network, and they recommended the removal of a previous ineligible activity that was other activities as agreed upon later. They believed that there was concerns that that could be used in a biased manner, meaning we would allow something for one vendor but not for another. The evaluation criteria was edited to be more specific, and specifically call out items that we had access to. There were references to percentages that we didn't have, and there was information for a profit and loss statement that not all businesses are able to generate. And we added criteria that allows for self-certification of minority-owned business, women-owned businesses, and LGBTQIA+ businesses, and gives credit for self-certification in addition to those certified businesses through an independent association. The other main adjustments were around the application criteria itself. Previously, the list was pretty extensive, included about 6 or 7 items. It has been streamlined to 2 items, as most of the requested items are on the application itself. So rather than overwhelming applicants with this giant list of things, it's already inclusive. It's on the application form that they need to fill out. Also, at the recommendation of the Vermont Persons of Color Business Network, we have removed the requirement for a profit and loss statement. Many businesses that are just starting out don't have the capacity to create one of those, and all of the information that we need that would be found on that statement can come from their tax documents that they are also going to submit. The proposed time frame in the revised guidelines would allow us to start accepting applications upon your approval of these guidelines through July 24th, so approximately a 1-month application window. This would also appoint the Finance Commission as your evaluation committee to bring back recommendations to council, and that was at your request from the previous meeting.
And I'll just clarify for anyone who isn't familiar, the Vermont Professionals of Color Network is serves several functions, but one of them is to serve small and medium-sized and micro BIPOC-owned businesses in Vermont.
Thank you for the thorough update, Angela. To my recollection, I believe you have covered everything we raised before and it has been addressed in here. But counselors, is there anything that is missing for you?
I have just one thing on the application. You can only indicate whether you're certified or not. It doesn't, like the application form doesn't appear to have a radio for self-certification. I wasn't sure if that would update once we update these guidelines. Awesome.
That is correct. I'm going to work with Paul tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you.
I had,
Well, would you like to go first?
I just had a couple clarifying questions. One of the things that I know we talked about, and I just want to make sure, I don't know if it could be highlighted in some way, is the exceptions for businesses not eligible for the bridge program. I don't know if there's just like a way to bold it or something.
So this will not be the public version of these guidelines. At the recommendation of Vermont Professionals of Color, we are going to be putting forward-facing public guidelines that are at a 6th grade reading level, and so are much shorter and much more straightforward.
Okay, awesome. That sounds great. The next question I had was about the evaluation criteria, the second to last. I know one of the things that came up with the last, or an issue that downtown Winooski had was not having, I don't know, the data capacity to make some of the judgments. So I was just wondering, so it says currently underrepresented or lacking businesses in the city, and I assume we have that data.
We do have that data. We have an economic development report that was generated, which includes the list of businesses that are desired in the community.
Perfect. And
Finance Commission will have access to that.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's my next question. I think those were the main things that I had. I think the one other thing that I highlighted in a couple areas was just, I know the confidentiality seemed to be a concern as well. So the let's see. So they will be, the applications themselves will only really be shown to the members of the Finance Commission?
Only redacted applications will be shown to members of the Finance Commission. Only myself and the city manager would have access to the full application. We do have the full application submitted to 2 people at a minimum to make sure that you can't have somebody just ball up an application and throw it away, that somebody is aware that an application has been received.
Awesome. And then when that comes to council, are we getting just a report on what the Finance Commission, so we aren't gonna see those?
We will have the same redacted applications that the Finance Commission will have received, and staff will have full data if you have more specific questions.
Okay, and will that be part of public record, or are we going to do that in executive session?
If you want more information, we would do that in executive session, but the redacted applications don't contain any identifying information, so those would be included in the public packet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I have, I think in the similar section that Aurora mentioned, section 2B, that last sentence just reads, I guess I'm feeling comfortable with the will be there and would prefer maybe, but maybe it's just the way it reads. Exemptions for businesses not eligible for the bridge program will be granted. And I don't know, I feel like maybe fits better.
I disagree, because if we're saying, will be is saying, if you're not eligible for that program and you provide to us why, then you're exempted from being required to have applied for it. I feel like maybe is making it open to our judgment.
Right, there's gotta be a good enough reason, not just any reason.
Like if the bridge program said you're ineligible and you can show us that, then you're
So the
exempted.
way, maybe I can articulate why I'm reading it the way I'm reading it. So to me, the way it reads is like not a focus on eligibility. It's a focus on like, yes, you will be approved. Like regardless of what the bridge program decides, you will be approved for grant funding. That's how I'm reading it.
I see the if statement that follows that as clearly qualifying, like that's the condition you have to meet to obtain that. To me, it seems clear and defensible, and that if someone challenged our application of that, that'd be pretty easy to say that that guideline was being followed.
Yeah, to me it was less on eligibility, it was more on like, does this, by saying will be, does that presume, or does that more or less indicate that we will go ahead and grant that application, regardless of other qualifying elements.
It's just an exemption
from that requirement.
That eligibility requirement.
But I'm just telling you the way I'm reading
Yeah,
it,
I think it seems to me clear that we're saying that you can get an exemption if the reason for ineligibility is provided.
Yeah, and if this isn't the final wording, then that's something that Angela can keep in mind when.
If you think it would be clearer if I clean that up, but the intent of that sentence is not that you would be receiving the grant, it's the exemption would be granted, not that you would get the grant.
Yeah. That's fine. If I'm the only one, that's fine. I can accept it.
Well, I'd say that if one of 5, then it's possible others. So we can make it clear in the public facing for sure.
Section 4B, I didn't see anything around the timing of when reports would be due.
It is in the grant agreement that they sign with us, and it is within a 1-year period.
Okay,
And
so
it's actually under
section
section D. Yeah, section D.
Is it possible to repeat that timing in section B? Or at least in the application, just ensure that that's clear.
I can add that right to that first sentence. Businesses will be required to document grant funds were spent on the purpose designated in their application within 12 months of award.
Okay, thank you. And then, Angela, you might have mentioned this already. Was there any advice around, like, if the money isn't spent or it isn't spent within our guidelines, how we would recover those funds, if need be, worst case scenario?
So we have such broad eligibility and use of funds criteria. I doubt that we'll have that issue because commercial lease payments are an eligible use that everybody has elected. So even if they aren't able to complete other projects, just paying their rent is an eligible use of these funds.
Okay.
If we needed to pursue receiving the funds back, that would definitely need to involve attorneys because of the grant agreement that they signed when we gave them the funding.
Yeah. Okay. I come up from previous work and contingency planning, so that's why I asked the question. Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions? All right. I assume somebody wants to make a motion to approve these updated guidelines.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Wait, did you say aye, Aurora?
Yes.
Okay. Everyone said aye. Okay. Thank you. We are on to item G. This is on for approval, bank signatory updates.
This is also me, and this is pretty straightforward. The signatories for the City of Winooski bank accounts have historically been the city treasurer, the assistant treasurer, and the city manager. Now that we have a new city manager who we hope to stay here a very long time, we would like to add her as a signatory to our bank accounts.
I hope too.
So we currently have bank accounts at TD Bank, People's United Bank, and Opportunities Credit Union. They have various means to have signatories added to their accounts. Both People's and TD require approval of resolutions, which were included in your packet, and Opportunities Credit Union just requires a copy of the city council minutes to make the change to our account. We would be retaining the city clerk and assistant treasurer Jenny Willingham and our current treasurer Alexander Anastasia Hill as signatories at this time, in addition to adding Elaine.
Any questions or concerns? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the bank signatory updates?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Up next, item H, the FY23 ESSER contract update. Welcome, Ray and guest.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm single parenting tonight, so I have an assistant with me.
Excellent.
But yeah, excited to bring this forward to you all again for another year of funding through the school district's ESSER dollars. As you saw, a little bit smaller amount than was allocated last year, but in line with what our actuals ended up being for this year and what we expect as actual revenue that we can pull in realistically within the next 12 months. So yeah, happy to answer any questions. One thing I did want to specify is that the appendix that's included is likely subject to change. That's sort of our initial estimate of what programs we'd like to run, but that's something we're going to work on as a staff, and certainly with some feedback from the school about which programs they think are working well for their kiddos, and certainly any things they're hearing or seeing that they'd like to see added to the mix. So I fully expect that list of programs will adjust a bit, but it's a pretty good framework, I think, for more or less what you'll see from us through ESSER over the next 12 months.
Awesome. Any questions, concerns from council?
No, but I wanted to definitely shout out just the diversity, the amazing diversity of different programs being offered, and it looks like a bunch at the library and a bunch at the pool, so just kind of want to give a shout out to that because that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, thank you for that.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the FY23 ESSER contract?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Thomas. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. On to item I, the goal update for safe, healthy, connected people.
I think I'm not, I see John in the back of the room, but I assume he's still there as well. But he and Rick and I put this together. And yeah, I think by and large, like these usually do, I think it more or less speaks for itself, but happy to answer any questions you all have about any specific items on there. But overall, I think a pretty good final report for this fiscal year. You know, I think overall feeling pretty solid about the outcome.
Thank you, Ray. And I know there's some highlights on here for new information. Questions from council?
I mean, I'll just say that I appreciated the update. Like, I think the way that you've sort of tracked into providing these is a really helpful way to scan for changes and understand how we're progressing those goals. So I want to say, like, I think silence is just, it's really useful. So thank you for taking the time to put it together.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, I did not feel surprised by any information on here, which is always good.
I don't know, this probably doesn't completely apply, but I was just wondering if, you know, we can recruit some of those St. Mike's kids, or the folks from St. Mike's that are helping out. Do they want full-time jobs?
Which one is that for, Aurora?
With the fire
Oh yeah.
emergency, I noticed the note about still looking for more staff, it sounds like.
Yeah, so just to clarify a little bit, we have our own part-time on-call staff.
Yeah.
You know, it is a challenge to recruit in 1 square mile to fulfill that role. So we've always worked close with St. Mike's, and we are working even closer with them.
Okay.
You know, they are responding pretty much 24/7 here into the city.
Wow.
You know, to supplement, you know, the community needs, so we can do it safely. They are a critical role in what we do. So we have recruited them.
Okay.
You know, their board, their organization is very committed to Winooski, and they're also very committed to the town of Colchester. So therein lies some future discussions and work that needs to be done of how they're able to help both communities. And again, I can't say enough, they're a critical part of what happens here. You know, daytime, we can do it by virtue of having full-time staff here. But the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is our challenge, and they're able to help fill that void.
That's really great to hear. Thank you for that context.
Yep.
All right. Hearing no concerns or additional questions, we will move on. Thank you, Ray and Chief Audi. Item J, this is on for approval, board and commission reappointments with Elaine introducing.
Yeah, so with Eric, we've got several of these will not have quorum without reappointments, which is why you're seeing them as reappointments, even though we still have open calls out. So those would be housing, finance, safe, healthy, and connected people, planning and zoning and DRB.
Correct.
And then we do have just the chair for municipal infrastructure. They would have a quorum without that, but it's just the one and he's willing, so we've put that in there for your consideration. Do you have questions about the memos and who we have in there? I haven't gotten an update from the ones that have not indicated in the memo or not shown as expressing willingness to be reappointed, so those are the wild cards.
We did get updates over the weekend on housing.
Okay.
So all three of the commissioners, Jessica, Anna, and Leslie, all said that they were willing to continue serving.
Great.
I will say, like, we make these appointments in 2-year terms typically. They're not like lifelong appointments, right? We ask people if they're willing to continue serving, and then we do typically reappoint them. if we had a huge pool of candidates and these folks' terms weren't expiring next week, like, I would want to do more diligence on evaluating who we are appointing, but in lack of that, I think keeping these folks who are already engaged and willing and informed is, we should do this.
Cool.
Any questions or concerns?
Is there any, since DRE is probably one of the more essential elements because of permitting and quorum needs, are we needing to do some more aggressive recruitment to ensure we have alternates for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, the challenge is we just started outreach recently. Like,
Yeah.
we've been behind on many things, so. Would someone like to make a motion to approve this slate of reappointments?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. So on to item K. This is on for discussion, an update on prioritization of ARPA and TIF funds.
Right, so obviously this is a high priority for the city. We have these unusual one-time funds from ARPA, which is about 1.9 million. And I don't know if I want to be public, but somewhere around 390,000 from TIF after ongoing expenses are taken into account. Estimated, yes, thank you. This is not taking into account conversations and, let's say, informal commitments made on especially the TIF money, but including the equity director position. But so those funds are not officially spoken for. So clearly we need to be spending this one-time money strategically. So I'm updating you all on a draft plan. I'm looking for your input on this skeleton. So the plan on how to determine how to use these unusual funds. It's really basically straightforward. So staff and council are continuing getting public input. There'll be language interpreted listening sessions this summer. Paul, I don't know if you have an update on those. Our first confirmed one is next Saturday. Interpreter availability has been part of the challenge. We have one other one committed that I'm aware of. Paul, do you have any others?
Just the two commitments for now. So we're looking at, I believe, Arabic and possibly Pashto on Saturday the 25th, and then potentially Nepali on July 2nd.
July 2nd, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So then staff will be analyzing that data between the summer and early fall. Council would select initial investments for a portion of the funding in the fall. Staff would then build initial amendments and investments and continued outreach expenses into the FY24 budget in the fall. And then, again, these are all recommendations. So then the recommendation would be that council would implement your public engagement strategy, which is next on your agenda, to identify further investments. And that would be in spring 2023 and beyond. Does this sound like enough of a plan? Do you have input on it? What comments do you have?
I think what's just not captured in this larger level, this is so high level, right? Is that, there's some part of here where you have like staff analyze data and then council select initial investments. There's some part there about us reviewing, there's the survey data about ARPA, but then the current state of TIF and commitments and the projections on that. Because that is ongoing fund, like it shouldn't be treated like a one-time investment. and that tie in with with the FY24 budget and future debt obligations. Like, we know we're gonna have to pay for this fire truck. We know we have Main Street payments coming up. So there's some like bigger picture of being able to see all of those commitments. And I think you kind of described that, it's just not captured in the 5 points.
Okay. Is it almost the TIF really comes into play here more down in steps 4 and 5?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's when we're just making decisions, but like, I think it's gonna take more than one agenda item for us to
Yeah.
get around that.
Can I ask about kind of the step, because I see there's kind of a lot that happens between step 2 and 3.
Yeah.
In terms of ideation, right? Like, what are the investments that we could select from? When you say select initial investments, are you envisioning that we're giving guidance on general areas we want focus on, and staff come up with like programs and associated dollar amounts to respond to that general, like, I want you to focus on housing, I want you to focus on business support, whatever comes out of those? Like, I guess that's the question, is like, is investment like specific like levels of expenditure for certain actions or outcomes, or are we looking more at like addressing certain issues? Does that question make sense?
Yes, and I haven't looked at the data, so that's why it's so broad, because I can imagine that there could be potentially one idea in there where all of us are in agreement, staff and council, that we should absolutely spend on this. The example that, I mean, this would be TIF, not ARPA, but like the equity director, that's an example where that's not a programmatic outcome, it's just we need to be funding that. So I wouldn't, it's possible it could be either of those things.
Got it. Because yeah, I think that's a question in looking at for me, in looking at the data, is like, okay, so I see that these are things that our community is prioritizing, feels are really big, important pain points, challenges, but that's not an idea to address them. It's just a pain point or a challenge, and how do we get that? How do we select an idea to address that?
Sure, right. So part of what I'm picturing with the data analysis is qualitative data analysis, which means that we would be looking for themes. And if there's examples and specific ideas and that staff is supportive of them, we would pull those out. But I'm anticipating we'd be pulling out themes from that, so you have both to look at.
And so I think the question is, when we as council generating ideas and actual investments with dollar figures to make, not necessarily dollar, but like, are we identifying actual investment, like new things to do, or is that? Because I've looked at the survey data, I've done kind of that qualitative, like picking out themes, how many of them mention housing, how many mention financial recovery. And if we're just given a list of problems, how do we select investments? Like, to me, it's like select areas to focus on. So I think that's, if we're going to select investments, there's going to need to be like this interim step of like, here are the problems and here are some investments you could do to address those. Which of those investments do you want to do? And it sounds like we would be trying to do that at step 3, not the problem selection at step 3.
Yeah, because it could be like, do you want to expand funding to the Housing Trust Fund? That's an ongoing solution for housing. Or do you want to create a new temporary grant subsidy for ADUs? Because that's another way to address short-term needs.
Right.
And so, like, how do we have that discussion?
Right, as opposed to housing supply is a problem. We want to focus on housing supply, bring us back investments.
Yeah.
Is my question, I feel like my question isn't clear, but I think that.
Yeah, I think essentially proposed programs or proposed avenues to address the overarching problems is what I'm hearing. And like, at what point are those proposed programs, for lack of another word, where does that come in?
Yeah, where are they surfaced or defined? Yeah.
Yeah, that's clear enough. So the reason why I said initial investments is because I'm anticipating some of it will be there. Some of the ideas you've already discussed at the commission level, or you've heard about, or staff have talked about it. But we're not claiming that we're going to have all the answers based on what we know so far and the survey results. So pick some initial programs that we can work on, but then if there's a lot still like, yes, housing is a problem, we don't know what to do, then we'll have that housing position that needs to be working on policy options to allocate more of that money as we go forward, if that's helpful.
I do
It's
feel
going to
like
be
there's
iterative.
potentially an interim step of like, these are our top 3 problems or whatever. We want to spend the most in this area. You know, we allocated $100,000 to support small businesses already. There
Well,
can be a direction of like, do we want to do more of that, or do we want to put half of this into housing and a quarter here? I don't know.
I do feel like your strategy retreat was for that. So if you feel like somehow this is different from that, then we could discuss a different process. But I feel like the priorities came out of that.
I think the
to help
priorities
with.
did, but we're not going to fund every priority, right? Like,
That's what the voting was for.
and I do, in my mind, I think these are different pools of money where I would not I think about TIF as ongoing operational funding and the ARPA money, while we can do whatever we want with it, as a one-time investment into something. And so for me, I don't know, they're treated different.
And yeah, I gather, I treated the priority setting as what are we going to do within the budget that we've already proposed and had voters passed. So it's kind of set on that budget. We didn't set a budget and then set priorities based on those additional funds. I mean, ideally we would have, but we just couldn't because of the timing. I think if when we were talking about this a year ago, the idea is by the next budget, the next priority session, we'll know how we're going to spend our ARPA and TIF money. We'll be able to make these kind of strategic, like short-term, medium-term, and then long-term solutions, like plans for how to spend that, whether it's property tax buy down or whether it's investment in new infrastructure that we don't have to raise taxes for. I think there's all sorts of ways that we could do these like long-term structural operational changes, but then also one-off investments from ARPA. And we didn't have full information from these listening sessions to inform that priority setting. Like, I think they're a good list of priorities, but I would want to be able to look at that fresh, because I see all this money is not going to really be spent in this budget cycle. It's not going to be spent during this 22-23 priorities window.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree
Separate
with that.
process then.
My selection for priorities for work plan were not inclusive of the one-time funds.
Because I wonder also, are there short-term investments that staff would recommend, like, hey, we know this state program is available this year in response to ARPA, we think it's a good idea, or
Like for matching funds or,
yeah,
yeah.
like things that wouldn't have been haven't been on our radar yet, or that are only temporary.
Okay, separate process then.
And I do want to kind of I want to be reminded of everything that I've thought we could commit TIF money to in the last 2 years of being on council, because I know we've had like nice charts of debt service and when TIF starts phasing in and when debt service from tax increases start phasing out. So I think it'll be helpful to be reminded of those, that we can choose to proceed however we want, but it's also good to remember maybe when we make commitments, or not commitments, but like you said, informal commitments.
It's debt that's coming up that has to be paid no matter what.
And we modeled it and accepted it on the idea that we can pay with TIF funds in the end.
And not that anybody would jump on this idea, but it could warrant a retreat just to have some dedicated time to review the data, have some focused discussion, and I don't know, like stand up and walk around and write on boards, and I don't know, I think we need more than just a council meeting and consecutive council meetings. For me, I think it would be beneficial, but.
Yeah, I think we would need a dedicated session where we just talk about the individual fund we're going to use.
We could fit that into one council meeting.
I mean,
if there's nothing else
we
on
could,
the agenda, sure.
Yeah. I think one thing that I definitely feel with this, with how Wayne has phrased the third part, is thinking about, I I don't want us to get in a place where we're standing in the way, in a way that's almost creating harm because we're so like wrapped in a circle. If there are things like Elaine saying, like the equity director position, where it's like, we need this. We all know we need this. We have reports, like the equity report saying we need this. I want to make sure that we have room for that, because I do think it is really important that we take the time and think about how we use these funds, and we're taking into account all the different sources that we're getting this. But I also do want to be cognizant of some kind of urgent things that feels like we need to act on sooner rather than later.
Right, I mean, that's the crux of the issue with the budget discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, all the staff roles can happen at that time. Like, that role is funded for now, for this fiscal year. But if there is longer term stuff that we want to talk about, we want to hang up the budget process conversation because of that.
Yeah.
Or if there is an urgent, I mean, staff brought these COVID business recovery grants to us as an urgent need to address outside of this process. And so if there is another urgent address, or urgent issue to address,
Yeah.
that could be dealt with one-off as well. Is that clear enough feedback for you? Is there?
Yes, so I heard you'd like some, well, you need something between 2 and 3, which is essentially another meeting to discuss how to select those initial investments, whether they be programmatic or thematic.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And then as things develop, can figure out what that looks like, what the timing is.
Right, and leading up to, or having available at that meeting is having a visual of all the existing informal commitments or ideas that, and I'm not sure if someone's captured those from council.
I would bet that Angela knows where we have
I think it's
modeled it.
been in a council packet too in the past, where we've listed everything that we've already said we would spend TIF on.
Yes, there has been that. And I also have an ongoing list, so I can help with this too.
Great.
And this also kind of aligns with what Finance Commission is looking at. Like, they were asking to see at their next meeting the future debt service and like Main Street and stuff. So some of that will already be put together.
Great, awesome.
Anything else on item K? Okay.
Okay.
So let's move on to item L, the City Council engagement procedure. So this is just on for discussion tonight, not approval. Jim and I worked on, essentially we looked back at processes council has used in the past to do community engagement. And and where we've been successful, like with Charter Change Committee, the Charter Change Committee's outreach, and ongoing engagement through liaisons or the SASH program at the Housing Authority buildings. And kind of formalized in an outline here what that could look like in service of creating regular, ongoing listening and engagement and access to counselors. And then a targeted approach, like when we're specifically trying to get feedback on a major initiative, like ARPA funding, for example. This also lists kind of some of the barriers that we need to think about on an ongoing basis. We've tried to address some of them here, but it's something you have to keep looking at, right? And then modeled also what it could look like in practice with a list of groups we already know about. So, wanted to get feedback from you all today on this. We need to actually reach out to these groups and see, like, do you want to does this approach make sense to you? And then consider starting to implement this slowly, starting in the fall. So like in the full 6-month example model, we're hosting 3 events a month, but we're not gonna be able to do that right away. Like we'd build our way up to something like that. And the goal is really like, we have had successful engagement strategies in the past, and then they've fallen off. And so can we put something on paper that we can hold ourselves to, but also that as future folks come up here, they don't have to start from scratch? Anything you would add?
No, I think that captures it well.
Thank you. So it is a bit to digest. Want to leave space for questions and additional ideas.
Go ahead, Aurora. You said before I said
I was thinking a little bit more about the identifying other barriers to access.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I was thinking about is if we can choose places that are accessible to public transit, and also thinking about times. So there is no bus in Winooski on Sundays, so that might limit where people are able to go to make things easily accessible. And then I was also thinking kind of about more ADA accessibility, making sure spaces are physically accessible, as well as making sure materials are accessible. So one thing I've noticed is we have scans of PDFs, and that's not accessible. A screen reader cannot access a PDF if it's like a picture or a scan. It needs to be a document where you can check by like highlighting. So a screen reader could actually pick up the words on it. So things like that of like making sure materials are accessible, not just in languages, but also in being able to read them. Those are a couple things that came up. One other thing was thinking too, and I guess this is less of a specific barrier, but thinking about the intersectionality and overlap of different communities. Like when we talk about seniors, we have seniors in all our communities. So making sure that those kind of things are considered, and how are we making sure we reach people who are in multiple overlapping communities and not let them slip through the cracks because they can't access things.
Thank you for those.
Thomas, you want to go next?
Yes, I think that one question I have is, I think we all know that things don't always work for people after the work hours. People are tending to their kids and have other stuff to do. Is there availability for staff or for us to be able to do these more on the weekend? I feel like not everybody, obviously some people work on the weekend, but I feel like that's where you would be able to get the most engagement with these types of events. But I don't know if that would stress staff too much to be available on the weekend.
Before you have to commit to anything, one, when I think about the ongoing accessing existing groups and asking to meet them, I think we would ask them what they want, what works for them, and then try to work around that. And I think for initiative focus, and that effort isn't for staff. Like this is for us to own and lead for ongoing engagement. I think we can invite staff. They are welcome to come. I think for initiative engagement, that would have staff focus included. We have seen them commit to weekend things before. I think when we consider initiative focused engagement and how heavily we want to go, in my mind, we have like 2 initiatives a year that require this level of outreach. Like we can't be constantly going into the community, focus on this, right? So just to set a stage there of like, this is what the frequency I think is we're talking about.
May I add to that too?
Yeah.
So just speaking from the experience of having done these in the WHA buildings and with like 4 or 5 of the language groups at the school, all of those were done without staff presence. And some of them were done on the weekends, some were done in the after school hours, some were done during the workday. And they were pretty well attended. You know, some was pre-COVID, some was during COVID. So I think that I think we can do this type of work, and it's productive and appreciated by communities that we've gone out to, even when it's just city councilors. But I think it is like, this is a commitment for us. Like, if we say this is what we want to progress, like, this is us doing this. And I think that's important to remember. Like, we're the ones who are going to develop the talking points. We're the ones who are going to say, like, what are we talking about this month? We're the ones who are going to report back to each other and the community about what we hear. And I think that's it is a significant amount of effort on our part. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat that. It takes a lot of work, but I think a lot of the time that you and I spent building these sessions was working with, like, trying to figure out how to do it. Like, where do we hold it? How do we get interpretation?
Yeah.
And like, once we have this formalized and we have a structure to work in, I think that stuff gets easier. So I think I feel optimistic that, like, we actually know this works, or has worked in the past, and I think it could work again.
I also I think it says it in here, I don't know if it does, but the intent would be to ideally have 2 council members for every event, to one avoid a quorum, but 2 to have more than one voice there and building those connections. So it is spreading the load of potential nights, weekends, or daytime commitments across people. I think we have varying schedule availability.
And that was gonna lead to a question of, basically accounting for the inability for a counselor to make it for any variety of reasons, you know, sick, vacation, whatever. So, like, when, in the event that happens, how backup would be managed. So having 2 counselors would help address that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we don't
that
have
too.
to cancel or reschedule.
Yeah, so at least one can be there.
Yeah.
And I see this as kind of analogous to our commission commitments too, where if one of us can't make our scheduled commission time, we ask and say, hey, I can't go, can you liaise for me at this meeting? And that has worked.
I have a question about community events and just in terms of making a quorum. Are those able to be announced as the potential of a quorum being there? Because I feel like for things like Juneteenth, like, there were 3 of us there, and I definitely think it was very beneficial that for multiple people to be there. I know that, like, as we darted around, different people asked us questions. French Heritage Day is coming up. I don't know who's planning on going, but, like, again, there's a possibility for a quorum.
I don't think the quorum doesn't matter if we don't discuss city business or decision making. Like, I don't think it matters at community events. Winooski is small and we're likely to, but we shouldn't, any 3 of us shouldn't be, like, talking to a resident and then, like, saying, well, we should probably do this, or, you know, it's avoiding that, like, decision-making debate.
Yeah.
Right, it's inevitable that you will be discussing city business, but as long as not 3 of you are together at the same time discussing it, it will be okay.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure that the public fully understands that, so, like, I just think of one particular resident who spoke to me at Juneteenth. She did know that there were other counselors that were there and kind of wanted to speak to all of us about the issue. They weren't near me, so I said I'd let them know that I'd spoken to her, but...
I think, like, when somebody asks something like that, well, for one, like, making it clear, I don't speak on behalf of the council, like, the decision would be made by the full council, I can't make that decision, whatever. But if that resident was, like, trying to organize the 3 of you, it would be fine to listen to them.
Okay.
I think just somebody would need to say, you know, we're happy to hear this, but we can't talk to you about, we can't have a discussion about how to proceed.
You can listen but not discuss.
Yeah. Like, I can bring it back to the full council for consideration, or to city staff, depending what it is. It is a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
So for a question, I'm skimming this, so the details might be in here that I'm missing. So with the proposed rotation schedule, is that accounting for the initiative-focused events, or is that separate?
This is, so
Separate.
It's separate, like this is ongoing. If we happen to be meeting with a group while we're doing initiative outreach, it could be combined. Or there could be separate targeted outreach. I think it just kind of depends how things pan out.
Sure. For the initiative focused engagement portion of it, is it possible to set up like a web form or a online request form that we could?
Oh, like inviting online comment?
Yeah.
I can
Something
add that to
that
the
where
list.
it's like open, rolling, recurring, ideally like a fillable form, so it's not handwriting, but an option for both, of course. But just thinking of like another way to receive requests and.
So I think the idea was to capture that with the community surveys. Like anytime we would be doing an initiative, we could have a survey that has virtual and on paper access.
Okay.
On an ongoing basis, though, the public comment form is always available on the website. It's not really the same thing because you're.
Yeah, and I'm realizing that the way I was reading this is not the way you intended it. So. Yeah. So when you said initiative focus, you mean like for
That's for like
resident
one thing.
voting.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was thinking like as
For the
another
ongoing.
way, I was thinking as like ongoing availability of.
Oh, so for ongoing,
Yeah.
we could leverage the contact form that's on the website. Like,
Yeah.
it's putting that out there, our email, here's the different channels to reach us.
Yeah.
And I tried to outline the existing methods that we maintain for engaging with residents, and it may not capture, I don't think that
It doesn't
the
include
public
that there.
comment form isn't included there, so that might be something to add.
I can add that in.
Like if anybody wanted to invite us to their block party.
Yeah. And then one thing I wonder just more about some more maybe informal gatherings. Like I would look at the senior center coffee hour, like maybe a coffee hour not associated with a group. Because when I look at the rotation and I kind of look at the section under opportunities in city for engagement, like I think of a group that I don't see represented.
Send me
here.
that list.
Okay.
Tell me every group that you can think of.
Well, no, I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying like 20 to 30 something year olds like aren't represented in any of these groups.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
May want to meet like one of their city councilors.
Well, I mean, this is actually specifically a section that I wanted to ask you all for input in on is like, what are other, like these are groups we have connected with in the past. What are places where we've missed so far that we should add to this? I don't really know any
The basketball
ongoing
court.
groups in my age range.
Well, no, and that's why I mean like your city councilor is going to be at 4 quarters this like evening or something like that. I don't know if we can partner with businesses like that, but you know, if we're going to go to the senior center, that's where seniors are. People my age are not at the senior center generally, except when I'm going to be there doing my coffee hour next month. But like,
Well, you know, that's another thing that I don't think is captured here that that has been thrown around before but never formally adopted is like, should there be every Friday afternoon, which is probably the worst time I could pick, a member of council will have open office hours in City Hall or in a public area.
yeah.
That's not something I've included in here. If that's something that you all would be interested in committing to, we could think about what that might look like as well.
I would be open to something like that. Personally.
One thing I wonder about, and I've heard this come up in different contexts too, is trying to figure out how this quite fits, but almost beyond the political part of just people seeing us as people too. Like I'm showing, yeah, and I, again, not a fully formed thought, but like, how do we kind of have that? And I feel like almost like coffee hours might be like feel like a less formal place. Cause I think, you know, thinking of us as entities of civic engagement versus your fellow neighbors in Winooski, kind of.
Like if you're where they are, as opposed to them coming to City Hall to have for us to have an office hour.
So I definitely think like there's a really active bike ped group on Wednesdays. I have not had the ability to attend, which has been very frustrating because I would love to join that group. But I think, honestly, as maybe when we get the agenda planner, we could also get a reminder of what Parks and Rec events, like the frequency, when they meet, when they happen. So like, I think Thursdays is like the pickleball instruction day, you know, just a reminder of like what days things happen, when they happen, where they meet, time frame. So
Is that all on the city website calendar?
We can do drop-ins.
I mean, it's on the rec calendar, but it does take a little assembly, I think. So I can look at what's already available, and if it's not, then.
What if we, in this document, embedded how to identify those community activities, like which calendars? Because I think there's the library calendar and the rec calendar
They
are
could
different.
yeah.
And so we could have those links like actually here, and again, just thinking about how to make this incumbent on us as counselors to maintain that we could, like, we know where to go. So it's like, oh wait, are there any events coming up this week? I want to be social and like not political.
Yeah.
Just be a person playing pickleball, and you can go find out where those opportunities are in a given week. Almost like this is all about trying to get out to where people are, like to tell them things, but also just to get out to where people are to be with them.
Right, yeah.
Maybe.
Christina
And I could just make
was doing that.
Just make a quick pitch here too for the for the website. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly so we have an idea what that looks like. So if you're on the city's website, you can, of course, if you're looking for rec opportunities, you can go to winooskibt.gov/rec, and that embedded calendar will be on the rec page. It's loading slowly because my Wi-Fi is terrible. Same thing for library, winooskibt.gov/library. And then, so these act kind of like the front page calendar we have for publicly warned meetings. It's a widget, it opens up. And then if you like, on the home page, specifically for community services, if you're looking for all of those kind of family-friendly events, there's the community services calendar button right here. And so all of the community services programs, except for the senior center, feed into this one calendar. So if you're looking for a day with less things going on in community services or more things, you can click on that too.
Thanks, Paul.
Cool.
And one other I'd add to the list is the school calendar.
I was just thinking that. Was that a hand raise?
Nope.
Do any of you play basketball?
Poorly.
Apparently the lot behind the O'Brien Center is quite active with teens, so drop in there. I don't know how that would go, but you could try it.
I break my shoulder again.
Again.
CPD do it sometimes.
Oh, nice.
Yep. Oh, can I add one other item? Or I don't know, Christine, if you know where this is at with the school? There's out with the school board. I believe you shared.
I did.
it.
Oh, yes. Okay, so I shared this with the board chair as well. We wanted to talk about being more collaborative, and we know when we're out in the community or when we have listing events, we get asked for things that are in their purview. Residents don't need to care who does what. And so I think I put this in here. I'll double check though, but as we organize events, we would just extend an invitation to the school board as well, so that they could send someone to attend alongside us.
And I did have a conversation with the board chair, and she was pretty supportive of this strategy, of this engagement strategy, and I feel remiss, she was wanting to get notified when this is on our agenda, because she wanted to come speak to it, so.
Shoot.
I messed that up, so on that, but I think she thought this seemed like a great structure to set up for the city. Is excited to see us doing it, and if there's a way to strengthen that tie with the school, that'd be great.
One group that we have already made a commitment to on roughly quarterly basis is the Congolese community.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was captured in this. But I want to make sure we remember that.
I don't think so. I think that came together after I drafted this, but I'll make sure that they get added.
Okay.
I also want to reformat it so it's more user friendly, but.
I think you guys did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? This has all been very useful input.
So it was nice to have food with these events, but I know that's a lot to ask for, so I'm just gonna just place it there and say it's nice to look at.
I think that could be possible for initiative events. I think making that commitment for ongoing events that we organize on location would be challenging.
Like I said.
Unless they would like to do that, but.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna update this with the input you all shared today and then bring it back. Well, I think then need to do some outreach to, you wanna help me do some outreach to groups on this? See if like WHA wants to re-engage and stuff.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you all for that discussion.
Could I comment?
Oh, yeah.
So, to follow up on Thomas's question, I've been contemplating a parallel staff effort, which should probably coordinate, so once we're ready for that, I'll be in touch through Christine, so.
Awesome.
I'm very excited to see you all embracing this. This is what we need to do, all of us.
All right, we are on to item M, our Pride Month resolution. Thank you, many counselors, for contributing here. I don't know if we've done a resolution in the past.
I don't recall.
I'm kind of surprised, but maybe we haven't.
We did last year, but
I thought we might have.
I'd have to look back.
Anyhow, whether or not we did one last year, which I kind of think we did.
For the flag raising.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was recalling.
Anyhow, so June is Pride Month in Vermont, right? And we have this resolution recognizing that. It resolves that the mayor and city council of the city of Winooski recognize June as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning, intersex, asexual, and more LGBTQIA+ Pride Month in the city of Winooski to inspire equity, create alliances, celebrate diversity, and establish safe environments in our schools and communities throughout the city. Be it further resolved that the mayor and city council in the city of Winooski fully supports the rights, freedoms, and equal treatment of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, and asexual people, and to unequivocally show the support, will continue to fly the Progress Pride flag in the Winooski Rotary. Are there any questions or comments on this resolution?
Glad we're doing it.
Likewise.
Here.
Do I have a motion to approve the Pride Month resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Aurora, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Happy Pride Month. On to
Could we have on the record the statistic about our council?
the gayest council in Vermont.
That is amazing.
It's very exciting for Winooski. While I haven't seen that documented in data, from my statewide interactions, I believe it to be true.
I do believe it's correct.
The best counsel in the state.
Some people have said maybe the second gayest in the country, but we're not sure.
We're very proud of it.
Yes.
So I have, this resolution has no, it's fine, okay. I have another resolution here recognizing World Refugee Day. It was yesterday on June 20th. This is a resolution we have done in the past as well. Resolving that the city of Winooski declares support for welcoming refugees to our community, regardless of their nationality, place of origin, religion, or race. And the city of Winooski does hereby proclaim June 20th as World Refugee Day, as we stand united to commemorate the strength, courage, and resilience of the millions of refugees around the world, including refugees who have come to call Winooski home. Alongside this resolution, World Refugee is being celebrated by the U.S. Committee of Refugees and Immigration in an event at Oak Ledge Park in Burlington next Sunday, the 26th, from 10 to 4. I believe A2VT are, I don't know how local they are, but they have a song about us. We'll be playing there among others. Any questions, comments about this one?
I had a very brief, swapping out 2 words.
You want to recommend it for next year? I get this from USCRI,
Gotcha.
World Refugee Day.
Okay.
But you can tell me what it is right now.
It's first page, 3 up from the bottom might be easiest.
Yeah.
I was wondering about changing sparks curiosity to encourages learning.
Okay. Let me make a note of that for the future. I should say, this came from an organization initially, but we've been redoing the same one in Winooski, so I'm
Gotcha.
sure it could be edited in the future. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the World Refugee Day resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. This brings us to the end of our regular agenda. We have warned an executive session pursuant to Vermont State Statute Section 3131B in regards to labor relations agreements and our AFSCME employees. I am looking for a motion to find that we should have this discussion in executive session per state statute, that a public discussion would put us at a disadvantage.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Thomas, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And now I am seeking a motion to enter into executive session, inviting City Manager Elaine Wong. Anyone else?
No.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we're going to enter into executive session only to discuss the labor relations agreement. We will not discuss any other topics of business. We will come out of executive session solely to adjourn the meeting.